Imagine a single narrow stretch of water so vital that when ships stop moving through it, the price of your groceries, the cost of your commute, and, your winter heating bill could shoot up almost overnight.
Right. And as of today, Thursday, July 16th, 2026, that water is practically on fire.
Welcome to the Claire and Horatio Daily World Brief, available at claireandhoratio.com. We're bringing this briefing to you because understanding the civic stakes of global events, it requires looking past the noise to see the human and structural consequences underneath.
Exactly. Right now, the United States and Iran are locked in a severe military escalation. They're trading airstrikes and effectively paralyzing the Strait of Hormuz.
We are looking at a direct threat to civilian sailors and, frankly, a massive destabilizing force for global economic stability. The concrete developments over the last few days show a really rapid, dangerous deterioration of an already fragile standoff.
The U.S. military struck several high-value targets. That includes facilities near Tehran, infrastructure on Qishm Island, and the critical Card Island oil terminal.
And during these operations, U.S. Central Command took some extreme measures to enforce their warnings. They disabled the commercial tanker Belma by firing a Hellfire missile directly into its smokestack, citing the vessel's refusal to halt.
Wait, a Hellfire missile into a commercial smokestack? That is an extreme tactical choice. It almost guarantees a lethal response.
It does, and Iranian forces did launch immediate, direct retaliation. They struck U.S. military bases in Bahrain, Jordan, Kuwait, and Erbil.
Which then led U.S. President Donald Trump to reimpose a strict naval blockade on Iranian ports. He explicitly declared that a recently negotiated ceasefire is permanently dead.
So the Strait of Hormuz is acting as this geopolitical choke valve. When you close that valve, the financial and inflationary pressure immediately backs up into every household budget globally.
We are already seeing the price of oil jump to roughly $85 a barrel, and the immediate risk to human life has become so acute that India's Directorate General of Maritime Administration formally barred its seafarers from transiting the strait.
Which is massive, because India is one of the largest contributors of sailors to the global merchant fleet. If they pull their workforce, the logistics of global energy transport begin to freeze entirely.
When major labor suppliers pull their sailors from a shipping lane, you realize how much of the global economy just relies on civilian workers taking on military-level risks.
Adding a secondary layer of pressure to that, Houthi forces in Yemen are now threatening to target Saudi Arabian oil routes if the U.S. continues striking Iranian energy infrastructure.
This standoff is also generating intense political friction inside the United States regarding the broader regional strategy. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance publicly stated that certain elements within the Israeli government are actively manipulating American public opinion.
Vance is alleging these factions are attempting to derail any diplomatic negotiations with Iran, basically aiming to prolong the war indefinitely to serve their own regional security interests.
So does Vice President Vance's public criticism signal a genuine fracturing in U.S.-Israel policy?
We have to evaluate his statements against the actions of the legislature. The U.S. House of Representatives just soundly rejected a measure to cut U.S. aid to Israel. 314 members voted to maintain the funding against just 104 who voted to cut it.
We are witnessing a stark divergence in strategic priorities between the executive branch and allied nations. The Trump administration is attempting to force a diplomatic end to this specific conflict.
Right. They are utilizing aggressive military strikes combined with the leverage of previous ceasefire agreements to pressure Tehran into a corner.
And Vice President Vance's comments reflect acute executive frustration with external actors complicating that diplomatic track. Conversely, Israel views Iran's nuclear and missile programs as an existential threat to its survival.
Their government favors a strategy aimed at completely dismantling those capabilities through sustained military pressure, rather than, managing them through interim diplomatic agreements.
The overwhelming House vote to maintain aid illustrates that foundational legislative support for Israel remains robust, even as the White House signals growing impatience with the trajectory of the war.
External wartime pressure testing international alliances is one thing, but that exact same pressure cooker can fracture a country from the inside out. In Eastern Europe, Ukraine is currently undergoing a massive government shakeup.
President Volodymyr Zelensky ousted his highly popular defense minister, Mikhailo Fedorov, and that move actually sparked rare, vocal street protests in the capital city of Kyiv.
Fedorov is being replaced by Yevgeny Kamara, who's the acting head of Ukraine's security service, the SBU. And at a parallel leadership shift, The Ukrainian parliament approved Sergei Koreski, the head of the state energy company Naftogaz, as the new prime minister.
The ouster of Fedorov represents a fundamental clash over how modern wars are actually fought and managed. Fedorov came from a digital transformation background.
He championed a highly decentralized, tech-driven approach, right? He was heavily focused on drone warfare and asymmetric tactics.
He essentially tried to run military procurement with the speed and agility of a Silicon Valley startup, bypassing traditional red tape. This led to public, bitter accusations that the traditional military chief, Alexander Syrsky, was deliberately blocking these innovative initiatives to protect his authority.
By appointing Kamara, an intelligence and security veteran, President Zelensky is choosing to consolidate power within the traditional military establishment at a highly critical phase of this multi-year conflict.
But Ukraine's public unity has been its absolute greatest shield against Russian aggression. If citizens are now protesting in the streets over Fedorov's dismissal, holding signs demanding the government stop sabotaging the victory, is President Zelensky's wartime political capital beginning to crack?
The protests indicate that public patience and unconditional support have boundaries, even during a fight for national survival. Fedorov was a symbol of modernization and transparency for many younger Ukrainians and frontline soldiers.
Soldiers who relied on crowd-funded drones when traditional supply chains failed. Shifting from civilian-led technological innovation back to hardline, traditional security leadership risks alienating the vital segment of civil society that mobilized around those modernizing efforts.
This internal reorganization is happening alongside crucial international developments, though. Outgoing UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer just made his final visit to Kyiv before handing power to Andy Burnham.
During that visit, Starmer pledged roughly $345 million to help Ukraine acquire 16 Swedish-made Gripen fighter jets.
Which underscores that long-term, heavy-metal military support from Western allies remains critical, regardless of Ukraine's internal political shifts or debates over drone tactics.
For more daily briefings, brain candy explainers, and classic audiobooks, visit clarinarratio.com.
Turning our focus to the intersection of the U.S. presidency and unregulated digital frontiers, we are tracking a staggering story regarding financial governance. President Trump made at least $1.4 billion from his family's crypto business, World Liberty Financial, in a single year.
A major catalyst for this massive windfall was the Chinese crypto billionaire Justin Sun. He invested $75 million into the struggling token and purchased an additional $100 million of a related meme coin on his Tron blockchain.
The sequence of these financial movements requires rigorous scrutiny. Because shortly after Justin Sun injected roughly $175 million into these Trump-affiliated ventures, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission abruptly dropped major pending fraud charges against Sun.
They dismissed them with prejudice. However, the financial relationship has recently soured in a highly revealing fashion.
World Liberty Financial utilized a backdoor code, which is a mechanism controlled entirely by anonymous administrators, to freeze Sun's tokens.
This action triggered dueling lawsuits. Sun is accusing the company of utilizing a blacklisting function to trap his assets, but only after the founders had successfully unlocked their own tokens to secure billion-dollar profits.
Imagine sitting at a casino where the house, in this case, the president's family trust, which takes 75% of the profits, isn't just taking a cut of the action. They literally coded the casino chips so they can glue them to the table whenever they want, locking the doors and trapping the players' money.
Doesn't this obliterate the foundational promise of cryptocurrency? It exposes this project not as a decentralized financial system, but as a highly sophisticated pay-to-play mechanism wrapped in blockchain terminology.
The mechanics of World Liberty Financial directly contradict the entire ethos of decentralized finance. The fundamental premise of a smart contract on a blockchain is that the code is immutable. It executes automatically without a central authority or a middleman.
By writing a backdoor freezing function into the code, the operators maintained absolute, centralized control over the assets. This elevates the conversation far beyond a simple business dispute over frozen funds.
It touches on the core of national governance and corruption. We're looking at a structure that effectively bypasses traditional bribery laws and campaign finance restrictions.
It allows foreign billionaires to directly enrich a sitting president's family trust by hundreds of millions of dollars without any of the traditional regulatory friction. It raises massive national security and ethical red flags regarding how political influence is purchased, rewarded, and ultimately controlled.
That dynamic, privatizing massive profits while operating in an unregulated frontier, is playing out with equally severe civic impacts in the world of artificial intelligence.
The AI boom is generating intense friction between tech giants, their workers, and the general public. Thousands of Google workers have petitioned CEO Sundar Pichai demanding concrete layoff protections.
This petition, carrying over 4,500 signatures, comes as the $4 trillion company aggressively slashes its human workforce to fund massive, capital-intensive AI infrastructure.
Concurrently, Elon Musk's AI startup, xAI, filed a federal lawsuit in Texas against a user named Terry Harwood. They are alleging he misused their Grok system to generate child sexual abuse material.
The Google petition highlights the severe economic displacement occurring as major corporations treat their human workforces as expendable capital required to win the AI arms race. Workers are demanding buyouts and severance guarantees because they are watching their roles be automated or defunded just to buy processing power. On the other end of the spectrum, the xAI lawsuit demonstrates the dark, real-world consequences of deploying powerful generative tools to the public before the ethical and safety guardrails are fully functional.
The underlying architecture of these large language models is being rapidly scaled for market dominance, often leaving security as an afterthought.
If a company builds a machine capable of generating illicit material and hands it to the public, is a lawsuit against a single user a genuine moral stand? Or is it a calculated, preemptive public relations maneuver to avoid regulatory liability for building a system with such profound architectural flaws in the first place?
Pursuing a user for violating terms of service certainly establishes a legal paper trail showing the company does not officially condone the behavior. It places the burden of responsibility entirely on the end user.
As global legislative scrutiny intensifies over AI-generated deepfakes and illicit content, these targeted lawsuits function as a critical legal shield.
They serve to protect the developers from broader regulatory actions that might seek to hold the companies themselves strictly liable for the outputs their systems facilitate.
It is a strategy to maintain the position that the tool is neutral and only the user is flawed, despite the predictable risks of releasing such powerful generation capabilities into the wild.
We must look at physical threats affecting human security and bodily autonomy on a community level. In public health, Uganda has successfully discharged its last Ebola patient, initiating a 42-day countdown to officially be declared Ebola-free.
In stark contrast, the neighboring Democratic Republic of Congo is facing a spiraling outbreak with nearly 800 dead. This crisis is so severe it has prompted the U.S. to impose travel restrictions.
They are requiring citizens returning from the DRC to spend 21 days in a third country before entering America.
The divergence between Uganda and the DRC highlights how governance and physical stability dictate public health outcomes. Uganda relied on well-established aggressive protocols, rapid isolation, rigorous contact tracing, and targeted community messaging.
The DRC is attempting to manage a lethal, highly infectious virus in a region destabilized by active armed conflict. The World Health Organization notes that 80% of new cases in the DRC are originating from previously unknown transmission chains.
Health workers face deep suspicion and physical danger from local communities. The virus is simply moving faster than the medical infrastructure can track it.
We're also tracking a profound civic crisis regarding bodily autonomy in India, where there is an epidemic of gender-based violence specifically targeting women who reject romantic advances.
This alarming trend was highlighted by the recent murder of a female student in Bengaluru, who was stabbed to death by the brother of a man whose marriage proposal she had rejected.
Psychologists analyzing this pattern of violence point to a deeply ingrained systemic issue regarding power and identity. Arpita Bora, a psychotherapist, attributes this specific form of violence to an extreme sense of male entitlement combined with the fundamental dehumanization of women.
When women are culturally viewed as possessions or extensions of male honor, rather than autonomous individuals, a boundary or a rejection triggers destructive aggression.
It is a mindset where perpetrators genuinely believe they possess the right to punish women for making independent choices about their own lives and futures.
Both an uncontained viral outbreak in a conflict zone and systemic gender-based violence ultimately represent the failure of a society to protect its most vulnerable populations. How does a legal system effectively dismantle a culture of extreme entitlement that leads to such fatal, tragic outcomes for women when the problem is so deeply rooted in the psychology of the community?
Legal systems can impose harsher penalties to ensure swift, visible justice. But dismantling a culture of entitlement requires addressing the environments that normalize volatile behavior. It requires dismantling the systemic structures that subtly reinforce the idea that women do not hold full autonomous agency.
If we look at the broader pattern of today's briefing, We see several distinct pressures moving in very different directions. Military powers are violently testing international boundaries and shipping lanes in the Gulf.
Political leadership is testing the limits of public patience and unity in wartime Ukraine. And tech billionaires are testing the absolute limits of ethics, labor rights, and financial law.
How much of our global stability and our daily safety relies entirely on unwritten rules, ethical norms, and informal guardrails that are currently being dismantled right before our eyes? Thank you for listening to this briefing. For more daily world briefs, along with our deep archive of classic audiobooks, please visit clarnaratio.com.